Hi guys, my name is Christina and welcome to my channel and welcome to yet another episode of the podcast. So today's episode is kind of somewhere in the middle, just 36 minutes, which I actually think is pretty good for this particular weekend because this weekend I was actually doing a lot of freelance. I put a lot of hours of freelance and I'm actually surprised of how much I actually was able to draw, because usually when I have freelance and I'm delivering freelance and stuff like this, I'm not really able to draw a lot. Plus, I remember I had a pretty severe migraine on Saturday and like the first half of this podcast drawing recording. And my migraines, they're really ridiculous because I have a very specific case. I don't know, the doctors call it migraine with aura, and a lot of the time I don't even get the headache. I get aura, and aura is all the weird things your brain does, and like, I don't know, just your brain's going out of whack. But this particular time I actually had a headache as well. So I had a crippling headache, and then one of my eye wasn't seen really, because that's one of the effects that I have when I have migraine. I get temporarily like blinded in one or both eyes. Sometimes I hear sounds like audio hallucinations, you can call it. It's all pretty creepy what's happening. Sometimes I lose sensitivity in some of my fingers. It's really strange, but that's apparently what is called aura. It's like all the weird effects on top of the migraine. So this is what I was having on Saturday as I was drawing this podcast, and it's actually annoying because I was actually going to draw YouTube videos and I draw them in bulk on Saturday or in the evening of Friday. I was working in the evening of Friday, so I couldn't. But on Saturday, I was going to do my traditional recording of my YouTube videos, and I wasn't able because every time, if you have migraine with aura like mine, I think standardly, if you have migraine, bright light can make it worse. And for me, if I'm exposed to bright light during my migraine, this will be permanently immediately blinding me. So where the bright light is, this is where I will have a gray spot in my vision, and I wouldn't be able to see beyond this gray spot. So I didn't want to do this to myself by putting myself in front of the green light. And also when I have migraine, I put my glasses on that are not for vision. They actually just to protect my eyes from all the flares. They have like the reflective film on this, so the light that's coming, for example, from the side is not as harsh, so I'm not getting like blinded that easily. So but then you guys would see ring light reflected in my glasses and I would get blinded, you guys will get blinded. We don't want any of this. So speaking of this, I'm really surprised of how much I was able to draw. And in this podcast, I was actually would be finishing this page. I showed you in the previous one how I'm drawing effects that I'm using to draw magic, and we're gonna do some of this today. And overall, we're gonna finish this page. I'm gonna start another page that I actually started drawing as I was doing an Instagram live stream. So yeah, guess what are we drawing today, guys? We're drawing grass, but actually this podcast we're drawing just a little bit of it. Actually, most of it I reused. That's what you guys know. I really like reusing elements that I have. And at the same time, something like grass, I really prefer to draw just once. And what you can see on both panels, I will be still using a little bit of grass. I will still be drawing a little bit of grass to make it more custom. But bulk of it, I reuse from other pages. And actually, by the time I'm finishing the scene, each page becomes easier to finish just because there's so many elements that I previously drew for the scene that is easy to reuse. So that's just, I'm flying through this scene, and I believe this page is the last page of the scene itself. As you guys know, what I call a scene is something that has its own lighting situation. And so, for example, if characters are in one location during some time of the day, this is a scene. If the light is still transition, I would still call the whole thing a scene, but I will draw them into different bulks. We'll draw different lighting situation in their own bulk. And during this scene, I have scene within a scene. I have this scene and I have my character having flashbacks. And his flashbacks, because they're set in completely different location, completely different lighting situation, different colors, in my mind, it's different scene, and I draw my comics scene by scene. I draw out of order pages within the scene, but scenes I draw within order. So this page would be the last page that I have to draw to complete the scene of where the characters are actually physically present currently in this wilderness, fighting off, not like fighting off them, but like scaring off those firstborns, those monsters. But then after I finish this, I have 4 pages to go for the flashback. And I roughly say 4 pages, you will see what I mean. For now, we're finishing this scene and we are using these effects, and I'm gonna assemble them again for you guys, and you're gonna see how I'm doing this again. That was the first step that I always take for this particular magical effect, is that I create interactive lighting on the grass that I already have. So as I mentioned in the previous video where I was doing effects, I don't like lighting it as I'm drawing it because it's more custom lighting. It takes more time. It's just gonna take more time because I have to lit everything kind of like custom as I'm painting, and then I cannot move the lighting if I want. So if I move the light source, I will have to literally redraw my models. And I would draw light like baked in as I'm drawing it normally, but for the comic that just doesn't make any sense for me. So first step is just I'm painting this light on top. I have 2 layers, actually 2 adjustment layers. One is for brightness and another one for color, and the brightness obviously brightens everything up, make the shadows more lifted and less dark, and at the same time I'm adding this blue hue to it. And I actually have 2 of the sets of this adjustment layers. I like to have one to do like overall lighting passes just to light things up a little bit more softly, and then I have another one where I do highlights, as you could see I've done like on the characters and I did on the grass. And next part that I'm gonna do is the actual agents itself. The magic that they're using in this particular situation is called agents, is where they basically shoot this hot and bright energy blast from their wands, from the agadars, those stones on the tops of their wands. And for this one, I'm using an element that I combined previously, and this is maybe something that I need to show you in a separate video, how I'm combining this. I'm actually using photos from internet that I merged to the way that nobody can recognize those photos anymore. They're just combination of photos of very random things like sparks from drilling, or some light, or just lighting, or sometimes I'm using just weird reflection on the ice that I'm using. So this is a kind of like a preset image that I already did. I'm using it to create this blast on the wand, and for this particular one I decided to use another preset that I have. This preset that I'm currently bending and warping, I use for creating the fields, like the protective fields that they create. The fields are called Seidel. So agents is something you shoot, Seidel is this power energy field that they can create. So this is the preset that I'm using. Next step, I'm going even further in creating highlights on the grass. This is where I'm using literally Photoshop techniques. I'm just grabbing the grass that I already have, and in the Photoshop, if you right click on the layer, there is a blending option that you can pick, and there you can basically key out either the darkest points of the image or the brightest points of the image. And this is what I'm using. I'm naturally removing the darkest points on the grass that I already have to just leave those bright ones that I'm using also as a highlight, and I mask them out, and I kind of add this extra layer of complexity, so it's not just a patch where everything is brighter. I want to have like grass links kind of be more complex. Then on top, because what I'm drawing this particular scene, she's shooting in the ground in front of the creature to scare the creature off, to prove to the creature that she means business, she has weapon, and she doesn't want to kill the creature. And in the previous podcast, I tell you why that you cannot do it. But in this particular case, I wanted to, because she's shooting in the ground, I wanted to draw some dark grass on top of where impact is, to show that the magic that she is using, the agents, is actually slicing through the ground a little bit. So that's what I was doing for the first panel for this blast. And then for the second panel is they're not using magic anymore, and her Agadar, the stone on the top of her wand, is fading away. It's done its job, and I wanted to just create this fade away stuff from magic. Kind of like the magic performance is done and you have just some remaining lingering in the air bright spots, and that's really what I'm doing for the second panel. I feel it's very important to draw those transitional things. If you have action going on one panel and then action is not going on second panel, you might want to still have some remainders of the action fading out, so each panel doesn't feel like its own still image, even though of course still, but you can feel like the action was going from one panel to another. That's why I wanted to have these remainders of the magic. And then finishing touches, as you guys know, I'm using this glow that I put on top to bring it all together. And this page is done. Wow, that was really quick. Good job, me. And this is just the last panel that I wanted to touch up. So in this panel, so as I was telling you guys that I will be drawing 4 pages for another scene, the flashback scene, and I said approximately 4 pages. And the reason to it is because the way flashbacks are, they not necessarily start from page 1 and end on the page. They're not necessarily going to be taking the whole page. In this particular case, I have first panel that is happening in present. We see this guy's reaction because they're commenting on the stigma on his back, and the stigma on his back is actually means that he committed some sort of a crime. He either killed someone or stole something or disobeyed the direct order from the ruler, and they just mocking him and asking why he had it. And stigmas they have, I mean, they're called stigmas because they're kind of stigmas, right? And it's a social stigma as well to have them. You immediately start struggle in the society if you brand it with stigma. So we have this guy's reaction as they're prodding him about his stigma, basically meaning that he's not going to talk about it. He doesn't like being asked about it. He's just become grumpy. And the second, because they're approaching this is actually page earlier, that the page that I just drew is 10 pages later. This page is early. In this moment, they're just approaching the forest where the monsters are before they even attack the monsters. And this guy doesn't even know the monsters are even there. So as they're having this dialogue, kind of mocking him and just prodding him about his stigma, it just, pressing him and just having conversation that make him a little bit uncomfortable. They do it on purpose because this is how they're having fun. But at the same time, they're approaching to the forest, and because he's Kondra, he has very keen sense of smell and hearing, and he actually start picking up the sounds of the creatures and the noises they produce and the smells that they have. He's picking this up even before he consciously realizes that this is the creatures that are in the forest. So first panel is him having this reaction phase, reacting to what those people are talking about it. And in the next instance, as he's walking on the grass, he is having this flashbacks of again being in this snowy place, because every time he's having a flashback, the flashback is always from the same time and the same moment. It's always this night in the field, and there is snow everywhere, and there is corpses of dead people. At least this is corpses of people, I guess. So, and he sees that, and the more flashbacks we have, the more details it is being added to the flashback. But at this time, this is what we see. Every time he started having a flashback, it's always winter, night, field, location. That's why for this particular page, the first panel will be just a standard panel from present day, and then the next panel gonna be a flashback. So that's what I mean. It's not a full 4 pages. And why I'm touching this first panel a little bit is because I feel it was originally almost done. I just feel like I wanted his face to be a little bit more well drawn, because that's kind of what happened. The further in the comic I am, the more details my drawings become. And if I go a little bit back, even 10 pages or 20 pages, I feel like I need to draw a little bit better what I drew, because my skill, not like skill constantly improving, but I guess my speed is constantly improving. I can allow more details. So as I went back 10 pages before, because this is where the first page of flashbacks happened, I felt the need to touch up on his face a little bit here. And as you could see a little bit earlier, as I touched up on his face on this panel where flashbacks are gonna happen, I grabbed his face, copied it to another panel where there's no flashback at all, just because I drew his face and I liked how his face was drawn now, and I reused it in another page. I feel like it's so much details that are not too crazy necessary, but yeah, this is just how my process goes. Again, this is what this podcast is all about. And the way flashback is set up is that it's not happening, you don't have all these 4 pages in a row. So first, as they start to approaching the forest, as he starts picking up the smells and the sounds of the monsters without consciously realizing this is what he's picking up, those smells and sounds that trigger his memory. So as he just having conversation, well, not that he having conversation with those people, they are having conversation with him, and he is just giving them faces to try not to engage in this conversation. He has this first flashback. It's literally 2 panels as you see in the right bottom corner is that we see his leg stepping on the snow, then we see his face reaction, and we see snowy background behind, and the very last panel on the page is he has his legs stepping on the grass as they're supposed to. So he has just this 2 panel flashback moment. And then as the action continues, as he realizes and the people let him know that they're indeed those firstborns monsters in the forest, he starts getting more nervous and stressed out about this. And as those monsters start attacking them and he sees arrows, he having another set of flashbacks. And then in the very end of the chapter, as the kind of the situation in the present time gets resolved, he has yet another flashback moment that at this point not that erratic, it's more at this point conscious. So he is acknowledging what exactly he's seen, and we as the readers are able to see more details of the moment that he is recalling. I hope this makes sense. I'm just trying to explain, because the thing that I'm feeling is that it's very, very hard to explain something like what is happening in my story without just really retelling you the whole story from the beginning to end, because there are always so many moving parts and I find it really difficult. But at the same time, I feel like I have to give you this information for the context as I'm showing you what I'm drawing. So forgive me if this sounds a little bit crazy, but if you want to have more context, there's always a link down below to the comic. There is a link in the end to my comic that you can read online for free if you're interested and you want to get the whole context. Mind you though, you're not gonna get the pages that I'm drawing now. We're currently at chapter 7, like maybe page 12, no, actually page 15 of chapter 7, and this is, as you can see, I'm finishing in chapter 8. So I'm drawing a little bit ahead, but on my Patreon I'm actually posting all the work in progress pages that I'm currently working on. So if you just want to get the idea of what the chapter 8 is about, you can see almost all the pages in the sketch version I'm posting as I'm creating them. So yeah, now this out of the way, I gonna get to drawing this flashback seriously. And I remember I started drawing this guy's face in this particular panel some time ago, probably actually, oh dear, maybe in the beginning of fall, in the end of summer. This is where I started drawing this panel. That's why you can see I'm not starting drawing it from scratch, but I drew it some time ago. I started drawing it, but at the same time when I started, I realized, hey, I probably just want to go through the scene. I realized, no, I cannot just draw this flashback as well as I'm drawing everything else, because it's a different set of references, technically different scene, and it's just confusing. Plus the pose itself was a little bit difficult, so I already realized I'm spending a lot of time just because I have to reset my references. I cannot reference colors from any other panels that I created because it's the only panel at this point with this color scheme, so I'm wasting time a little bit kind of resetting up. I need to draw it with the rest of the old flashback panels. So, and at the same time, the face itself, the pose is a little bit difficult, so I just left it. And now I'm fixing it a little bit because I was not really happy with how I started it. But I find that this particular face pose is a little difficult, not because it's some complex expressions themselves. This is not something that I find difficult. What I find difficult is when the head is tilted forward a little bit slightly, so we see more of forehead and we see the face a little bit above, but at the same time the face is emoting, so you can see that he is emoting. He has this shocked expression, more not like crazy shocked expression. He has like still more a little bit controlled and surprise shock. So his face has this expression of shock in his eyes, but at the same time the rest of his face is pretty relaxed. It's almost as he didn't expect to be shocked at all. So I always find this particular combination of head being tilted forward and surprised expression, this combination, I find it harder to draw, because I feel to draw a surprise expression well, I really need access to the eyes and the upper part of the eyes, because when we're surprised, I think one of the ways to show it is when you draw a little bit of white above the iris, and just overall you're showing more of the white in the eye. And when the head is tilted a little bit, what happens is upper lid is covering the eye, so it's a little bit harder to do. And also when we're surprised, our eyebrows go up, but if the face is tilted in front, like forward, then it's harder to show that our brows are actually being lifted. It's easier to see when it is in motion, because you can see eyebrows before, and as they're being lifted, you see the action of them being one way and then they're going up. But when it is just a still, it's hard to tell that eyebrows actually got lifted, that they're not in the standard position right now, because the angle is so that they're gonna be low regardless. So I hope it makes sense, but I always find this particular combination a little bit challenging, because you either do anatomy correctly or you show the emotion the most effectively. And maybe it all comes to me thinking better next time and thinking maybe I need to choose different angles to show something like this. Maybe I should have my camera looking at the character from below. But I don't know, I really wanted to show my character from this angle. I wanted to show just him looking down and being like shocked. So yeah, this is the angle that I still find challenging. And as you can see, you probably can tell by the way I am redrawing a lot of things. So if the angle is challenging, I will be redrawing it a lot. I will be going back and forth. I will be flipping and mirroring again and again. And I will be using a lot of free transform to adjust things. I will do a lot of tweaks, and you can see that I'm almost changing my mind about how to draw things, because I'm redrawing things. That now, for example, you can see before hair were more puffy, then I count the hair down a little bit, and I keep thinking what like the angle of the nose that I want, the eyebrows that I want. And also before when I just started to draw this panel, I also couldn't decide how much his head is lowered, how much he is looking down with his head. Basically how it would be represented in this particular panel is that how high his shoulders would be, or how lower his head would be in relationships to his shoulders. And I remember as I was drawing, I couldn't decide. But as I'm drawing now, I think the reason is because I went through the whole chapter drawing this guy again and again and again and again, and I already drew an angle that is a little bit similar. And I found that this time around I'm not struggling that much as I was struggling in the beginning, but I'm still struggling. See, like especially how to draw the lid. I don't know. I feel I did a little bit of stylized lid in this case. Like if you actually look at proper anatomy and you just take a person that you know and ask them to tilt their head forward, this is not how they're gonna look like. It's a compromise. It's compromise between anatomy and expressing emotion, and this is something that you're gonna do in comics, at least from my perspective. It's you gotta stylize a little bit, because still image is not going to show if you do it anatomically correct and perfectly correct, is not going to be as expressive. that's why when you do a comic out of photos, for example, if you see something like this, I saw something like this being made. They just use actors and they do a comic using photos. Or if you see comics that are made out of 3D renders and people are not doing very expressive emotions, and because they're renders that are 100% not like photoreal, but anatomically you cannot just really bend and twist it a little bit depending on each panel. It looks a little bit strange, it looks unrealistic. Even though it is realistic, this is kind of the paradox. So I feel like the paradox of the comic is that in order to make each panel look realistic, you have to warp reality and anatomy a little bit. So because you're not representing the moment of how realistic this looks in like a frozen moment, you try to draw how can I say it better? So basically you're not drawing it to look correct in the frozen moment. Like if you took a picture of something, this is not what you're trying to match it to. You're trying to match your visuals to how we perceive it with our eyes. So if you see some action or some situation happening in real life, you don't want to match it to how it would look like on the camera when you snap a photo. You would match it to how we would perceive it as we look at it with our eyes. And our eyes, the perception will be combined of like the visual that is moving. So you kind of catching the vibe rather than the photoreal moment. I really hope it makes sense. I can see how it might not make sense. But this overall, kind of what I realized, that in some moments you have to bend anatomy a little bit, even if you're drawing in a photorealish quote unquote style like me, the style that has more, realistic rendering. You still have to adjust anatomy a little bit, and you have to prioritize the vibe that you're getting from the panel and the emotion that character has. And I always feel this struggle because in the comic, again, if I'm drawing a standalone thing, I want my emotions to look exactly super photoreal as possible. But in the comic, they have to tell so much more because visually people also don't emote this hard usually, and either I have to go a little bit grotesque and make my characters emote like they emote in manga, for example, where every page is so emotional and there's so much ways to like draw emotion on the characters' faces. Either I have to go there or I have to make emotions loud, like for example in superhero comics where characters are very angry, very upset, very happy, so emotions are loud. So I don't want to do either. I want it to be more realistic, and I want you to understand where each emotion that my characters experiences came from. So in order to achieve this, I have to constantly balance this feeling of expressing, like drawing emotions on my characters' faces in a little bit not correctly anatomical way. I make eyes of my characters work more like they would in animation, for example, while I'm making their other features not work as crazy as they would in manga or animation. And it's a combination of things where I'm bending the rules of anatomy and where I'm trying to kick more of a punch through emotions. So I hope it makes sense. Maybe I should make a whole standalone video about this, but it's gonna be it doesn't have to be applicable to you, or applicable sorry, English is a complicated language. So because it's just the way I decide to draw it, and this is not really a drawing tip necessarily, because this is just a drawing tip in case you're drawing exactly like me. So I might do the video about it still, but I'm just apprehensive that this video is not going to be as helpful as like how you can draw. It might just be helpful in the way that I'm giving an example of how artists like me might create it, and maybe it gives you ideas and inspiration. So because I wanted to clarify it a little bit, because this is a struggle that I constantly have, how much realism I'm willing to sacrifice to show emotions right, or how much realism I'm willing to sacrifice to create the right vibe. So yeah, I hope it makes sense. So from that panel that I just finished, I'm moving on to way later. As you can see, that page was page 33. This page is 51. This is the second to last page, actually. And in this one, I actually was doing Instagram live stream, and I just popped my camera and I started drawing it on the live stream. And I do feel that I draw a little bit differently depending either I'm drawing when I'm just drawing myself, or when I'm drawing and have Camtasia rolling, like something that records my screen, or when I'm doing my Instagram stream. And I do notice that I'm drawing a little bit differently because I know the people are watching. And if, for example, I'm drawing for myself, I might draw really slow. If I'm drawing Camtasia, I make sure that every set of recording that I do on Camtasia is filled with me actually doing something, that I'm not just drawing eyes again and again, how I do like doing when I'm not recording, because I just like drawing eyes. And when I'm drawing recording for not like recording, when I'm doing live stream for Instagram, I feel way more pressure because I'm drawing in real time, and at the same time I know that this video will not be sped up. I will not be able to edit it. And I also feel, because on Instagram live people just pop in, pop out, and then decide if they're interested to watch or not in in a second. And I also understand that this is not a sped up video. I'm drawing in real time, and I try to go for a little bit different way of drawing. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I'm doing a lot of the blocking, and I'm blocking shadows really quick. I'm blocking light real quick. So I'm trying to show and draw out the shape of the face, how the shape would look like, even roughly, faster. So if, for example, when I'm drawing on my own, when I'm not streaming, I might just start drawing on the eye and might spend a lot of time drawing eyes and ears. But when I feel like I'm streaming and it's not sped up, I'm trying to block the concept of what I'm drawing as fast as possible so people understand what exactly I'm drawing. So I don't want to just one part of the painting be drawn somewhat and the rest being flat, just lines and flat color behind. And as you can see in this one, I'm blocking a lot. I'm like blocking the nose. Details later, just blocking, making sure this is the nose, this is the forehead, this is the cheek, this is the neck. And I don't know if you guys see the difference, but I definitely see the difference, and I definitely draw a little bit different depending on this. And yeah, in this case, people were watching, and I didn't want to make sure, I did want to make sure people are not bored and they are entertained and they immediately understand what exactly I'm drawing. And I also mirror my images right away. And I try to catch all the wrongness that I have in my image right away. Usually I would keep drawing, and then eventually I would mirror. If I'm performatively, I guess, drawing, I try to mirror as often as possible and as early as possible, because I'm aware if people are watching, are they watching and they're thinking, oh my god, this is really crooked what she's drawing, I want to fix it right away. And also when I'm mirroring my image, when you mirror the image, the first thing you see is something very horrific. You see immediately everything that is wrong with the image, and that's why I want to mirror it as early as possible and keep mirroring as much as possible, so that when I mirror it doesn't feel so jarring. Like, it's still crooked but it's not that crazy crooked. And this is also what I keep in mind. It's actually pretty interesting when you're doing the streaming. And I'm also understanding that if it's not sped up and it doesn't have music on top or me talking on top, it's not as entertaining. And when I'm doing streams on my Instagram, if you want to join my Instagram and catch me on the stream, it's the Book of Contradictions. Just search this on Instagram. Really, but at this point, I think I finished the stream. I think I started putting background in after the stream was finished, because this is again something that I think it's not interesting for stream if I just open and actually you can see, do you see how I changed the way I draw a little bit? Now I'm more spending time on the details. Now I'm spending more time on the nose itself. It's not about blocking the nose, it's more about smoothing. It's about making each side and each part look right. It's not about just cover as much grounds as possible. So yeah, I don't think I'm finishing this particular panel in this episode. But yeah, I thought it's going to be interesting, guys, for you to see how I'm doing it for live stream. I would love to do live streams on YouTube. I actually would love to do live streams on Twitch as well, but I need my audience to grow a little bit, so it makes sense. So I'm not just drawing for one person, even though, don't get me wrong, drawing for one person is still great, but if you're doing it live, it makes sense for more people to be around. So this is actually what I have in mind, and I'm hoping when my audience becomes a little bit bigger, I will be able to set up the proper camera setup. I will be able to stream what I'm drawing and talk to you guys. Maybe we can do streams when I can do it like for a couple hours, 3 hours, just honestly do a session and have camera facing me as well and talk to you. But yeah, this is kind of like the dream that I have. But so this episode was a little bit chaotic. I talked about a lot of different things and was jumping around, I feel like, from topic to topic a little bit. But again, it's all just fair to what is happening, what was the drawing session. Next drawing session is going to be interesting because I actually will be going back to chapter 7 and the first pages of chapter 7 and redoing a couple things there, and I'm going to be explaining why. I think it's going to be interesting for you guys to see. But anyway, thank you so much, guys, for coming in, and I hope to see you in my next video. Thank you so much, guys. Bye.